Okay, I'm getting voicemail with Pastor Brooke, but I'll keep trying here.
Keep trying. If not, just make sure you have Dr. Knighton and the doctors up, and we can keep on going.
Okay, copy that. Yep. Okay, we have 1 minute.
Okay. Were we able to get him?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Were we able to get the pastor?
I just tried again, still no answer.
Okay. No, we'll just go on. I want to get to Doctors Knighton and for Holden as quickly as I can. Hey everybody, how you doing today?
Okay, 10 seconds.
Okay, well keep the music going so I can get this out. Okay.
Copy that.
Thank you.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world. We can do it. From a place of pain, war, and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Santita Jackson Show. It is a joy to be with you today on Thursday, February 10th. 2022. I'm so glad to be with you. I want you to meet me here on WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. Of course, took over the mantle of Air America, and now we are here, really at the center of progressive talk in the United States of America, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to tell all of your friends about us. Please, please, please. We're growing the station thanks to you, and we want you to continue to like and share. Go to WCPT820.com, stream us live throughout the day, AM 950 radio, and stream us live. And I want you to meet my morning stars, the Santita Jackson Morning Stars, as we have been named. And I want you to meet us on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe there, and meet me on my official Facebook page, the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Hey, Matt, how you doing? And Dave and Linda and Andre, and oh, so many of you are with us today. So Daryl and Barbara and Philip And Carol, not me. And that's my girl from the left coast. And Annette, all of you, Hannah from South Carolina, Max from DC. Everybody, please go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel and let's get with the program today. We're going to be talking about January 6th. What does it mean? Why is it so important? Who is behind it? Is it treason? Is it sedition? And why are people not in jail? Just what is going on with that? And then we're going to be talking about the impact that the pandemic had on people financially. Dr. Max Wolf is going to talk about COVID hardship, everybody. Indeed, we're seeing wealth inequality is the greatest that we've seen since World War II. And yet, billionaires made more money than they have ever made in the history of mankind. And then we are also looking at the fact that Big Pharma makes $1,000 a second, $1,000 a second, $1,000 a second. Can you believe that? Wow. It's just from this, from this misery. So there's something going on, and we've got to talk about that. We're still not talking about universal health care or Medicare for all, even as our health is at stake. Got to talk about that. And then, what if you're vaxxed? What if you're boosted? I mean, what next as restrictions are being loosened? I was talking to someone the other day, and he said, "I don't meet with people who are unvaxxed." I said, "Don't you think you ought to find out if they're COVID-19 positive or not?" I said, "Because you're vaxxed and boosted, and you have been asymptomatic, spreading virus." Think about that, everybody. Oh, oh my gosh. It's a whole lot. It's a whole lot. And so we've got a lot to talk about today, a whole lot to talk about today. And I want to hear from you as we talk about January 6th. What does it mean? 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Are you surprised? What do you think about that? As we hear about President Trump dumping documents in the toilet? Ooh. Let's get to some of these headlines. Chicago, everybody, will have a high of 32 degrees above zero today, mostly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 35 degrees above zero. And snow. The Dow closed up 305 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed up 295 points. The S&P 500 closed up 65 points. In the NBA, the Timberwolves, well, they fell to the Kings. Kings 132, the Timberwolves 119. And the Bulls, while they were triumphant over the Hornets, yay, 121-104. We love it as we are getting ready for the Super Bowl. How many of you are ready for the Super Bowl, everybody? Are you ready? I know I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm actually going to watch it this year. And in the NHL, well, Chicago was triumphant over the Oilers. 4-1. That was last night. And have you been watching the Olympics? Nathan Chen, really the most dominant male skater of the past few years. He had a tough Olympics a few years ago. And guess what? He won the gold yesterday. Congratulations. And then we had young Chloe Kim, 21 years of age. She secured history with consecutive Olympic golds in the snowboard half pipe event. Both of them are children of immigrants, and they're Asian American. And it is just exciting to watch these young people come into prominence and just working in excellence. She, of course, is a student at Stanford. And he is a student at Yale. God bless them both. I'm so excited for them. And I know their families are very excited for them too. She's been very, very open about some of her emotional struggles trying to remain excellent. And so, we just applaud these young people. Still, America is lagging behind in the medal count, but we're moving forward. We were 12th at the beginning of the week. Then we moved to 7th. Now we're 5th. Go Team USA, everybody. And guess what? We also have some other good news. An African-American woman is now, for the first time in history, the head of one of the federal banks. That's right. That's right. That's right. Susan Collins is now the head of one of the federal banks. Is that great news? It's surprising. She's an economist, academic, and she is now she's now with the Fed. That's right. She's an economist, university administrator, and she is head of the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, everybody. Everybody's paying attention to the Capitol riots. Everybody's paying attention to the Capitol riots. You pay attention to them too. We'll be talking about that today on the Santita Jackson Show. Call me, text me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Typically I go into good news, and we were going to have Pastor Darius Brooks with us, but he can't join us this morning. But I wanted to share something with you as we bring up Dr. Deborah Verholden and Dr. Shanina Knighton. I've had a very, very interesting and really tough few months and couple of weeks, really week, where I've lost three of the closest people to me in my life, to this week. And I hope, and then in August, really my parents' health was in peril. Our parents, both had COVID at the same time. It's been quite a few months, but I tell you what, it's helped me to become much more appreciative. I always thought that I was appreciative, but I tell you what, when you love someone, tell them that you love them every time that you see them. Everything that irritates you about someone will become just a little idiosyncrasy. It'll be something that you won't even remember. You won't even care about it as time goes on. And as I think about my friends and my beloveds who've made their transitions this week, if you saw me, you saw Mr. Timmy Tope Olumala. I've been riding in a cab with him now for 19 years, and he made his transition. I mean, he became ill. It happened very quickly. And he was with me up until the day that he went into the hospital. He would pick me up at 4:30 in the morning, on the mornings that I have to be downtown at 5 a.m., or 6 a.m. or 5:45 when I have to go downtown on Sundays. Never, ever missed a day. I could set my clock to him. And I thank God for putting him in my life. I thank God for him. He wanted to live to see his daughter graduate from college, and he did. And I thank God for him. I thank God for him. There's so many laughs that we had down through the years. My friend Darlene Wood, we were roommates in college. She just wasn't feeling well. Just one day, just a couple of days ago, she said, she went to work every day, just like clockwork. And then she went to the hospital just to get herself checked. She was out of here in hours. And that's the way it happens, everybody. You can turn your head and your life can completely change. So please, everybody, let's stop and smell the roses. Let's start treating people as if when we see them, this will be the last time that we do see them. And give them the love. Give them the love, because at the end of the day, love only matters. And everything that bothered you about someone will be something that you will laugh about when they're gone, at least gone from this earthly plane. Let's love each other, everybody, because really, that is the point. That is the only thing God asks us to do. He commands us to love. You're not supposed to kill. You gotta love. You gotta love. So everybody, please let's love and appreciate each other. I've got two sister beloveds with me this morning. Of course, Dr. Deborah Verholden, our health is all right here on the Santita Jackson Show. So glad to have you with us today. She is the Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University's School of Medicine. And of course, she brought along with us, and we're so glad to have part of the Santita Jackson family, Dr. Shanina Knighton, registered nurse, infection preventionist, research scholar at Case Western Reserve University. And of course, you can meet her on her website, Prevention Saves Lives. Prevention Saves Lives. Tell people about it. Tell people about it. Prevention Saves Lives. And her handle, of course, is at Hey Dr. Nina. At Hey Dr. Nina. Dr. Nina, real simple. And of course, Dr. Deb Verholden, known affectionately as Grandma here. India's Grandma, India's Grandma, and Dr. Deb on the Santita Jackson Show. My dear sisters, how are you this morning?
Pretty good. Good morning.
All right, all right, all right. You know what? I have a few questions for you before you jump into what you want to talk about. I came across an article that kind of struck me about being vaxxed, and it says I'm vaxxed, I'm boosted, and just had COVID-19. Can I relax now? I thought about you, Dr. Verholden, very quickly. What does that mean? Because you're almost in a similar position. What does that mean? What do you do? What can you not do? When do you get boosted? Can you not be around people? Can you be around people? What what can you do safely?
So this is after you've been boosted. And what I really think is interesting is once people have had infection, because this was the category that I fell in.
Mm-hmm.
And my university want everybody, and it wasn't just my university. I'm not picking on Michigan State at all. They actually came together with the other two large universities in the area, Wayne State and University of Michigan. And they sort of presented this united front. And they said that everybody had to be vaccinated by a certain day. And then they said, and everybody now has to be boosted by a certain day. And that day was February 1. Well, for me, I got COVID. My positive COVID test was on December 1st. I'm pretty confident I contracted it on November 27th. But that's my test date, December 1st. There is no added value for me in getting boosted within those first 90 days of my infection. And I've had plenty of physicians and other people tell me, oh, no, as soon as your symptoms subside, get your booster. Doesn't make sense to me. Doesn't follow the science. And here's why. Right after I get that infection, and mind you, we do here something called serology testing. There's a really great project that I'm involved with through the NIH called SeroNet. And what we're doing is in communities all across the country, we're testing people's blood to find out what their antibodies look like and what their blood serology looks like when it comes to COVID. And we basically developed this method. Actually, a guy named Chris Haney, who's an investigator on my team, developed this method to be able to isolate antibodies that come from vaccination versus antibodies that come from infection. And these serology tests are specifically looking for 3 types. So now, and this is what I always love, when I can talk about things that come out of my own data, things that I've had a hand in collecting. And what we know is minimally for people, you've got 90 days of the best and robust antibodies possible, even better than what you get from vaccination once you've been infected. And if you've been vaccinated and infected, you know, some people then call it in the media super immunity. I call it Wakanda blood. So I got Wakanda blood for the next 90 days.
Well, is it natural immunity? Is that what that is then?
Hybrid. You get these receptor binding antibodies, you get circulating antibodies, and then you get these antibodies also to the spike protein. And you get the antibodies to the spike protein when you get vaccinated. So that's the running start that your body has to mounting a defense should you become exposed. But my point is for at least 90 days. This is not my opinion. This is the science. And for some people, it's longer. You have about 90 days before your immunity from infection looks like it begins to wane. And that's an average. So for many people, it will be even longer than that. So getting a booster during this period of super immunity, to me, adds no extra value. It doesn't. And then you got to think, we're getting boosted. I want to make sure people are really clear. The thing that you're getting in that booster shot is the same exact stuff you got in your original shot.
So you're getting another shot.
You're getting another shot, and depending on which one it is, Pfizer, they'll give you a whole shot. Moderna, they'll give you a half of a dose. But it's the exact same medicine. It's the exact same formula. You know, we know they're working on these second-generation vaccines that should be more relevant to the current strains that's out. And unfortunately, very similar to flu, by the time they bring one of these things to market, we will predictably be dealing with other strains, right? So this is one of those things where science might be able to keep pace, but not regulatory control. Because we could develop a vaccine that would be specific to Omicron, but by the time that vaccine made it to the market, Omicron will not be the main variant that we'd be dealing with, right? Omicron came in, and within 3 weeks, it knocked Delta basically out. And within 4 weeks, 99.9% of cases, according to the CDC, became Omicron cases. So it absolutely dominated. So really what we need are second-generation vaccines that we can get out quicker. But the risk of quicker is you bypass any of those regulatory processes, you might increase vaccine injury. So I don't see that happening either. So if somebody has had infection, especially if you were vaccinated and then got infected, I would wait the 90 days to get the booster. I ultimately got boosted within that 90-day window, to be very honest, because I just got tired of fighting about it. So I got a medical exemption, and I had to provide proof that I had COVID. And I said, here's the science. I cited our own research. It does not make sense for me to get boosted within 90 days. I will get boosted when my natural immunity starts to wane. They said, okay, we'll give you the exemption, but now you have to participate in the early detection program, and you have to come on campus twice a week and submit.
And put yourself at risk of exposure to COVID. How crazy is that?
Which is, right? I don't even go to work. I'm like, I don't go on campus. I don't work in the office. I barely leave the house. Why would I leave the house just to put myself at exposure risk to get tested? And, here's what the real problem is. Because my university president is an infectious disease doctor, and he has a master's in public health. Like, he knows better, right?
No, then prove it to me. Prove it to me. And then act like you've got those credentials. I mean, what is that?
They brought a sledgehammer to the problem. All of these nuances only complicate things and let people off the hook. But they're important, right? So for somebody like me who knows better, I'm like, I'm not going to do that. But then I was getting one email every day, automated, and then on about day 4, this was after February 1st, I started getting an actual email generated by a human being threatening, punitive action if I did not complete this exemption process or get boosted. And then not just get boosted, but get boosted and provide evidence, that I had been boosted. And I just thought, this is terrible.
But see, Dr. Deb,
bad approach.
That is how people are feeling, period.
Yeah.
And that is a problem. It is a problem, and it has to be addressed. Look, we've got the border to the north blocked by these truckers and they keep trying to make them racist and right-wing. I said, that is not what's going on here. Coercion is something that the 21st century human being does not like. Goodness gracious, natural immunity. Well, Dr. Shanina, I mean, what about natural immunity? I have about 3 minutes left here. I mean, it's supposed to matter. That's what Dr. Deb has had. Is it robust? Help me.
I agree with her. I think the issue is, or their argument, and I'm saying their argument because it's not quite the argument that has gone with history, right? And what we know scientifically. That their argument is that, well, you don't know if your natural immunity is going to keep you from not having a severe instance of COVID. So this is the argument, but the question is like, well, how do we? And I think there's been so many studies at this point that have demonstrated that natural immunity plays a big role. And when I say it does, we're even talking about during the alpha, beta, and delta variants, where you had up to 90-something% of protection from your natural immunity after the first time of having COVID. And now with us understanding that 95% of people that die from COVID have an average of 4 chronic conditions, no, I do not believe that this is a one-shoe-fits-all, and that is the unfortunate part of what we're experiencing. And when I think about science and I think about just even, let's say, the profession of nursing, of where the goal is to do no harm, the question is are we doing harm by eliciting symptoms in people that otherwise would not have none if we're not properly vaccinating the right people? And I don't think that we have logically dove enough into science in that regard, meaning that if my natural immunity from having COVID gives me at least 3 months of protection, why are you telling me to go out and get boosted when the science shows that the booster is only going to last 2.5 months? So at that point, are you outdoing my good with that situation, which is going to give me less protection? So I do agree. And I also say this, just as Dr. Deb mentioned that there are infectious disease specialists that are making the decisions, I will be honest, this reminds me of mass psychosis. We also look at the fact that, with infectious disease doctors, That is one level of training. So you have just that mindset or that narrow mindset of what works. You're not trying other things that tend to work. And that's the problem that's being ignored here. And I also think that we need to be looking more at conflicts of interest, meaning who from, being honest, from the FDA that went over to work for these pharmaceutical companies and vice versa, jumping board and ship like within this past year or two. And I also think we need to evaluate our board of trustees to see who also is involved with vaccines as well as pharmaceuticals and have interest in these problems to make sure that they are making the right decisions for the public. And so I think just overall, a lot of the stuff that we're experiencing is human error, bias, and sometimes not just people doing the right thing.
Amen to that. I mean, can you all stay with me for a couple minutes before we, on the other side of the break? Because I want you to put a bow on this for all of us, Dr. Deborah Furholden and Dr. Shanita Knighton. We are coming back with, of course, with Dwight McKee and attorney Robert Patillo as we talk about January 6th. What do you make of this, everybody? I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Is it treason? Is it sedition? Should people be in prison? Should they be in jail? I mean, and we've got the generals who are saying, this could happen again. Wow. As we're watching voting rights rollback, as we're watching minority rule become the rule and the gold standard in the United States of America. That's not democratic. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that because we got a lot going on. Going to get some closing thoughts from our great doctors here. Dr. Deborah Furholden and Dr. Shanita Knighton going to give us some thoughts about natural immunity and conflicts of interest. Get John Nichols' book, Coronavirus Criminals and Pandemic Profiteers. Maybe there's some answers there. Back in just a minute. Hey, ladies, we're on Facebook Live right now, but you know what I want you to do? If you all can let me know when you want to get those stories to me so I can look at them, the night before so I can be, clear on where you want to go, and they'll go right there, okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so keep talking, and let me know when Dwight and Attorney Patillo are on. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go to you. I'm going to go to you, Dr. Furholden, so you can close that out, and then I'm going to pivot on over to January 6th. Okay, let me do that. All right, get that right. All right. Okay. Sorry, you guys, I'm trying to do a lot of things at one time. Well, no, please, I gotta run this part of the show from over here. And it's always something.
Okay, Mr. McKee and Attorney Patillo are ready.
Okay.
Way down.
What you say, hon?
My ability to multitask has gone way down. I used to be able to do a lot of things at once. Now I have a lot of things in front of me, but I'm really only tackling about one at a time.
I wish. You know what? Right now, the way this works, there's so many moving parts that you're looking at.
Yeah.
I mean, and Matt does a brilliant job at the station, but stories change. I've got the government clock here. I'm looking at Facebook. I'm looking at StreamYard. I'm looking.
Well, we know.
It's just
because afterwards, Santita, look, I see stuff pop up like from the show. I see it pop up on iHeartRadio. I see it on like various podcasts, and so like the shows, like after they done, sometimes I was like, oh wow, this is fascinating. Like how many streaming, resources it actually gets to.
Oh yeah, and now I'm really looking to grow it And it's a lot. There's just a lot. There's a lot that you that you have to do. Thank God for that. Excuse me one moment. Let me pull that. Let me do that. Okay. All right. All right. So let me get that. Okay.
Okay, we have
So
1 minute.
okay, we'll do like a 3 minute wrap. Okay. Well, actually four. Okay, Dr. Verholden. But of course, I know you all will stay because you want to listen to Robert and Dwight. Robert, how are you?
Try it again.
Robert,
Good morning. How are you?
doing great. Dwight McKee,
I'm here. How y'all doing today?
30 seconds.
That voice. Good morning.
Don Cornelius.
Hey, doctor.
Stand by. Okay, look at your watch, and then we're gonna get you to close this out, Dr. Deb, and then we're gonna pivot
10
on over
seconds.
to Dwight and wow, and Robert Patillo. Let me get this.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. The Santita Jackson Show, it's Thursday, February 10th, 2022. I'm coming to you from WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, Matt Souls station. How you doing, sweetie? It's always a joy to be with you and all of my brothers and sisters up in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Continue to like and share. Like and share. Hey, Michael Ann. Hey, Francis. Hey, Carolyn. And Hannah, I said from South Carolina. So many of you joining us today. Please, Leisha Cleveland, how you doing, sweetie? Please go over to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel and let's start streaming over there, okay? Please support me over there and please like me on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. That's my official page. The other page, it's just kicking people off and it breaks my heart to see it happen. But I need you to go to the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. But before we pivot over to January 6th and what all of that means, some people are saying, why are we even going through this investigation? It's very important, but two people who predicted that this was going to happen are with us today. Of course, Attorney Robert Patillo and Dwight McKee will be up in just a hot second. Dr. Deborah Verholden, Dr. Shanina Knighton, your situation, Dr. Knighton, Dr. Verholden, you've been vaccinated, you've had COVID, and you were in that interesting spot where your employer told you, hey, even with natural, they didn't even say even with natural immunity, you must be, boosted. And you're like, no, hold on, the science says, and you're at the School of Medicine. What would you advise people to do if they find themselves in a similar position?
Well, this is the thing I think is important about all of this. You got to do things that make sense to you and that you feel good about. And I don't feel like we are even close to the point where we should be mandating the COVID vaccine. And there's just too much valid concern, fear, doubt, all that stuff that people have. I think you got to continue to do the work and give people good information. And honestly, the Supreme Court telling Joe Biden, no, you cannot mandate COVID vaccines for employers with 100 plus employees. I think that was the right move. I worry that laws like that are going to be used as tools to, potentially further marginalize already marginalized people. Because then it'll be up to employers who and how they enforce that with and all these other things. So I think people need to know and understand what their rights are. And the reality of it is, a simple note from my doctor, which is messed up because that's privilege, right? Mm-hmm. Some people don't have the luxury of having a primary care doc that they can just pick up the phone, call, and say, hey, I need this letter from my employer to say your recommendation for me is to wait 90 days before I get a booster. And I really do underscore that. It's so important to have access to a primary healthcare professional all the time. And ideally, that's somebody that you're building a relationship with who knows you, knows your health, and knows your history. You don't want to be getting to know somebody as it relates to health and enroll them in being your partner and making healthcare decisions, to a stranger, right? So, yeah, people do have rights. Like I said, it got to the point, and I had a colleague who I trust very much. She's an emergency medicine physician. She's also an academic, also has a public health background and training. And she said, here's the deal, Deb. She said, the booster's not going to hurt you. Taking up a lot of unnecessary time. She said, it would be better for you to get 15, 20 minutes with your president, lay some of these things out and maybe give them an alternative path forward, but not to continue to suck up a bunch of your time fighting this fight. And so I went that route. But I can imagine for people who are very convicted, or even worse, the people who will get a booster, right after they recover and maybe have some negative immune response, they might not be so willing to go along with something like that. So, people have rights, and I just encourage them to exercise those rights and be in communication with a primary healthcare provider, because that will also be your champion. If your doctor says, no, don't do it, then it'll be very hard, I think, for employers to force that on you.
1 minute, Dr. Knighton, what say you?
So I am going to actually just pivot slightly, okay? And this is more so just even helping people to understand when we think about immunity. Immunity is that thing that we really can't see, right, and understand. And so I just want to remind people, too, if you are that individual that I'm going to say eat fast food all the time, you know that you're putting unfavorable things inside of your body. You know that you are, let's say, drinking. You may be overweight. You know that you're partaking in substances and habits that are not going to feed your body positively. Maybe you're not getting sleep like you should, only getting 2 to 3 hours. I can bring in all of these lifestyle things which are going to lower your immune system, which means that you live in a lower immune state. Then in that instance, I do want to be specific that, yes, you may get COVID, and for you, your immune system, like your body's going to have those antibodies that are going to be against it. But if you're constantly suppressing it with bad and with negative, then maybe those outcomes may not be the same for you. So I just want to bring that up as well. It's like just how, Dr. Deb mentioned, the vaccine is not one size fits all, which I absolutely 100% agree. I just want to also tell people to look at your individual life and assess, situation. If you know that you cannot keep up with your own health and you know that you're not taking care of your body, and we all know this, if we are not taking care of our bodies, then you would not be an individual technically that would fall into that category. And this is not giving medical advice. It's just giving advice to help you to understand that what we're saying right now is not a one-shoe-fits-all. When someone is saying, like, hey, I'm going to go talk to my employer, but you don't really take care of your body either, and you would be one of those individuals that does end up with a severe case of COVID.
Everybody take care of yourselves, because Dr. Deb is going to tell on me on my poor sleep hygiene because I don't get enough sleep. And so I thought I'd bust myself out before you do, Dr. Deb. I know that's coming, but it's true. It's true. And we really do have to take care of ourselves, everybody. We really, really do. And that's why I thank you for giving us that information about natural immunity, because it's a big deal. It's a big, big deal. And hey, me, I'd be like fighting. Like, well, what are you all doing? Then too, it's at some point you can't wear people down like this. And so we have to really, really think about this, about where we are and what we're doing. We've got, we're talking about January 6th now. Dr. Deborah Holden, Dr. Santita Knighton, love you so much. PreventionSavesLives.com, PreventionSavesLives.com. Hey, Dr. Nina, that is her handle. And then at Dr. Deb Verholten. That's her handle. Connect with them on social media. Of course, Attorney Robert Patillo, Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push. Of course, a host of his own show on WAOK on Sundays from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. And brilliant civil rights lawyer, brilliant social scientist. Oh, it's always a joy to have Dr. D, the original Dr. D, aside from Dr. Deborah Verholten, this Dr. D, of course, social scientist. Let's get to January 6th and why it's important. Because it's now leading the news again, Robert Patillo. And we're seeing the Proud Boys who are regrouping locally to add to their ranks before the 2022 midterms. You see that Republican Party leaders, they're censuring Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. And you have Mitch McConnell being very, very careful, very surgical, as Republicans are calling this officially legitimate political discourse of the insurrection at the Capitol. And then you have Mitch McConnell saying, well, no, this was actually wrong. It all looks like a lot of gamesmanship, Robert. And I'm just trying to figure out why no one's in jail. What is insurrection? What is a coup? What is sedition? What did we see? Did we all see the same thing, Robert?
So Republicans are asking the question, do you believe me or your lying eyes? And apparently a lot of people are willing to believe them, because what they've done over the last year is reshape one of the most traumatic events in American history to, a tour of the Capitol. That these people weren't doing anything wrong. There were a couple bad apples, but for the most part, they were just people who were upset about the election being stolen, about crooked Hillary, even though she wasn't running, and they were willing to and ready to talk to their representatives. That is how they have reframed it and reshaped it. And we see this continuously with Republicans, because Roger Ailes, about 20 years ago, figured out how to reshape the media landscape where they simply create their own reality. And they have enough people on their side who through First Talk Radio, remember when Rush Limbaugh and those people really started bubbling up and taking over the airwaves, they create their own reality. So if you go directly from Rush Limbaugh and then turn on Fox and Friends, and then during the middle of the day you listen to Glenn Beck, and then you hop on the internet and you go to CRTV or the Blaze or something along those lines, and then you read the Washington Free Beacon, then you come back, you watch Newsmax and OAN and Real America's Voices Network, and then you switch back over to Hannity once you get home, and you watch Tucker, and then you go to sleep cruising the internet on the dark web on the QAnon website. They can convince you that whatever reality is does not exist. If you ask them about what's going on with global warming, why is California on fire, why are we having earthquakes, they'll say, oh, that's the liberal hoax. That's this conspiracy. That's completely normal. That's how things have always been. It'll be a bomb cyclone one week. It'll be 50 degrees the next week. That's just how things have always been. Trust me. And people will believe it because that's the media cycle. That is the reality they live within. You can ask them about COVID and all the people who died. They say, well, those numbers are made up. There never was any COVID. The masks were part of tyranny and the deep state trying to control you. And this has all just been a liberal conspiracy. And people believe that all this was made up in a hoax. President Trump even pushed that. And Trump took it to a whole nother level, because he was able to get America to the point that we would throw away everything we ever thought a president was supposed to be. Was no other president walking up in the White House with a porn star like nothing happened. Imagine if Rock tried to do that. It just wouldn't fly. No other president just don't give their kids a bunch of jobs in the White House. But because he just kind of did it within the media sphere, they created it and it existed. But all of us remember everybody in the Trump administration because none of them were qualified. They were a bunch of TV characters because they understood that if you create and you control the media narrative, well, now you create and you control reality. So the reality that a lot of these people now live in is no different than the Star Wars universe, no different than the Marvel universe. Is their pocket dimension where they can create what is real and what is fake. And because of this, they've realized they can do the same thing with January 6th. They can have you look at it and see it and feel it viscerally. And if they pump the messaging into you enough, they believe they can get a chunk of the American people to believe that it never happened at all. And right now we're seeing that there's a large chunk of the American populace, a large chunk of the American electorate that doesn't believe that it happened at all. And if you don't think this is effective, a year ago, nobody even heard of critical race theory outside of a PhD student. Now you have people rioting at school board meetings in rural Virginia, thinking they're going to teach their kids to hate white people. If you think that this media cycle isn't powerful, you can think of anything in popular culture and in the press, and they're able to reshape it, repackage it, and send it back to you. So it's a very dangerous place where reality is relative. Reality is just simply dependent on whatever news source you're coming from. Regardless of what's happening in our public policy, it's all about how it's framed and repackaged to you. Look at the Supreme Court debate. They've turned, we're going to put a black woman on the Supreme Court into reverse racism. They've turned Brian Flores specific data on there being one black coach out of 32 is that he's making it up, and there's a chunk of America that will believe it. So when you get to a place where there's no shared reality, it's hard to maintain a nation, and that's why we're seeing this country fray at the edges, because nobody believes anything outside of the silo that they exist within, and there's no way to have political discourse, and there's no way to create public policy.
Was this treason? Sedition? Is there a difference between the two? I mean,
there's a couple of things. So, treason is giving aid and comfort to an enemy during the time of war. So, basically betraying your country to help a foreign power. So, the difference between that and sedition. Sedition is an effort to undermine the legitimate government of an area or of a country. So, this was absolutely sedition. These people were in the Capitol for one specific reason, which was to overturn the election. They believed that their person had won because their person told them that they won, because they exist within the media silo where it doesn't matter how we've counted elections the same way for decades. But because they live in a media silo where they've told that wasn't legitimate, till this day there are millions of people who believe that. And when they went to that Capitol, it wasn't to protest. It was because they were under the belief that Mike Pence had the ability to simply insert his own electors, elect Donald Trump president, and then let the courts figure it out. And if it wasn't for Mike Pence, that absolutely was a possibility. There's no mechanism in our Constitution to stop that from happening. Nobody ever thought anything this stupid would happen, but it has. And this is why we're seeing Congress now trying to address it. But imagine if it wasn't Mike Pence there. Imagine if Trump had replaced him with Ted Cruz or Hawley or one of his acolytes. That would have happened. And that was the plan the entire time. And they thought Mike Pence was on board with it. So it was absolutely sedition. And on the question of why is nobody important in jail, because they know how to insulate themselves within power. Rules only apply to us poor people. Rules only apply to those without power. Simply put, the people such as Hawley, Cruz, and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and some of these other people who really fomented and helped plan the rally, they should be subject of Department of Justice investigations. But what they did for their media apparatus is make you believe the Department of Justice is invalid. They should be subject to congressional hearings. What do? They make you think that the congressional hearings are invalid. So if you get to the political calculus of, well, if we were to find direct evidence the president was involved and we arrested Trump, what would happen to the country? We would ascend into a civil war if they put Trump in handcuffs and drug him away for what happened on January 6th. So we're in a very dangerous place where a good chunk of the leadership of this country doesn't believe in the country outside of them being in power, and there being literally nothing that can be done about it. So when Donald Trump said, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and not lose any support, he was underestimating it. It is far deeper than that. Apparently, he could try to overthrow the government on live TV, live streamed over the internet in 1080p, 4K, 8K video, And then he'll be the front runner for 2024, and it nearly worked. And don't think these people you don't do a dry run like that and then never come back again. They're right now down in Mar-a-Lago putting together the strategies, putting together the legal briefs, putting together the team so that in 2024, if Trump loses by 50 million votes, if he gets 10% of the vote, these same people will come back and be ready to overthrow the Constitution in order to make sure that their person is in power. So we have to take these things there very seriously and not simply allow them to use their media apparatus to convince you that they're spitting in your face, but it's just a cool breeze on a summer day.
With spray from the ocean. Dwight McKee, what are we looking at? I mean, you and Robert Patillo saw what we thought was impossible, but you know what did Muhammad Ali say? Impossible says I'm possible. This was possible, and it happened. It happened. Now we have the generals who are telling us, retired generals. They're like, look, this was a dry run for what could, would, might, maybe, will happen if Donald Trump or one of his acolytes doesn't win in 2024. I mean, what are we looking at? I mean, and why is this investigation important? And do you think it's going to go anywhere?
Well, not only was it possible, it was predictable. If you knew what you were looking at. First, that was an amazing analysis, Robert.
Oh, brilliant.
You should be teaching class this. This really started back in the 70s, the late 70s. This is a 40-year journey. It really started with Fardwell politicizing the evangelicals and setting up Liberty University, whose strategy it was to infiltrate the rural areas of America with minority Republicans to the right who could control the local processes, who control the election process, judicial process. They had a strategy to create a whole generation of right-wing, intellectual, very conservative constituents who could make an impact in terms of control and development from the local level. It then morphed into Pat Robertson and Tom Hagee and Reverend Hagee, zionizing the Baptists. So they brought in the Baptist crowd and really made them very pro-Israel and really kind of turned them against the Islamic world, which is what your mother and your father and Andy Young and that crowd ran into when they even tried to have a conversation with the Palestinians, is that they zionized the Baptists, took the evangelicals to the right, and then as it moved along, the Jim Bakers came in and brought a Armageddon component to all of this, so that the religious community at some point began to arm themselves for war and begin to see themselves as being the survivors of the Antichrist, and began to bunker down and buy ammunition and the militias and food to protect themselves in case there was maximum destruction or civil war. So you have all these things working at the same time. Trump understood that. He and his crowd, he and Biden and his crowd understood that very, very well, really well. And so they organized all of these people into one mainstream constituency for themselves, and understood that how manipulable these people could be and turn them into a base of operation. And so what you saw on the 6th is what Shorty Long used to call the function at the junction. You saw all the Soul Brothers, Jitterbugs. You saw all of those different elements, the Proud Boys, the evangelicals, the right-wing Zionists, the Nazis. You saw everybody show up coming out of their own interest and their own perspective to save what they think is the God's kingdom, which is the white Christian right-wing militia westernized kingdom whose job it is to preserve the world for Christianity and democracy. And so once he called everybody to arms, literally on the 6th, you pretty much could predict what was going to come out of that. It was going to be them under the guise of patriotism, not sedition. They see themselves as the ultimate patriots.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Preserving the government and preserving the natural order.
Absolutely.
Which is white Christians, men in charge of everything.
Absolutely. And you know what we're going to have to do is watch it. And everyone, I want you to call us at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278, because now President Trump has called for if these racist prosecutors, black women, interestingly enough, but they could have been white men, quite, I guess. He said if they come after him, we're going to have the biggest protest that America has ever seen. What was he calling for? What does that mean, everybody? What does that mean? It seems like we are sitting on a powder keg. And you know what? I misstated. Chloe Kim, the gold medalist snowboarder, she didn't go to, she's not at Stanford, she's at Princeton. And Nathan Chen is at Yale, are two of our new Olympic heroes. So proud of these young people. But let's talk about this. Let's talk about sedition and coups and treason and why some people go to jail, why some people are tracked by the intelligence community and some others are not. BLM and people who sympathize with them have been tracked by the FBI. But what about these folks? And many of them come from the military. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. They even had an FBI, some former FBI people in this protest. I mean, what is going on here? Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. We're going to be joined by David Daly. On the other side, he is down in Alabama, but he has some thoughts about this too. He is looking at, of course, the overturning of the voting rights down there. Got a lot to talk about on the Santita Jackson Show. Back in just a minute. Ooh, you guys, this is a whole lot. Hey, Mo Forte, how you doing, sweetie? It's wonderful hearing your voice. Those of you who want to go to Selma, Alabama, please go call Rainbow Push at 773-FREEDOM, 773-FREEDOM. For a nominal fee, you can get on the bus and get down to Selma March 5th through the 7th. I promise you, it is a pilgrimage. It is a pilgrimage. It is a trip that you really, really, really don't want to miss as you commemorate the Voting Rights Act, or the Selma to Montgomery March, which culminated in the Voting Rights Act after the deaths of Jimmy Lee Jackson and Reverend James Reeb and Viola Liuzzo. Just wow, what a time, what a time. And others died after the Selma to Montgomery March, just trying to secure basic rights, that we deserve and need as Americans. So please call 773-FREEDOM and please be a part of that. Be a part of that. It's I've been, and it's something to behold. And Reverend Jackson goes every year, faithfully every year. And started going. I guess he was at the Selma to Montgomery March, even though he was a student at the University of Chicago at the time, and he really kind of snookered his friends his classmates into going with him. Interestingly enough, they were a mixed group, and this is 1965. His two best friends, David Wallace and Gary Massoni, two white classmates, one from Oregon, one from Kentucky, And their wives, my Aunt Betty, Uncle Gary, who made his transition a couple of years ago, she made sandwiches. My mother had gone down to South Carolina because she was about to give birth to my brother Jesse. And oh, it's just a lot. It's a lot. You should go there. You should see Selma for yourself. Have you ever been down there, Dwight or Robert?
I have, and I'm going to be there on for that entire weekend from that Friday all the way until Rainbow Pussy Day on Monday. For the weekend of events, I'm actually setting out on a road trip for recruitment next week, where I'm going to be driving throughout southern Georgia and southeastern Alabama, heading down to Lakeland, Florida, meeting with pastors, meeting with students to let them know what Rainbow Push is doing for the Selma March, and to recruit some people to come there for the first time. So I'm going to be on the road all next week, getting people there, shaking hands. You know, there's a lot of parts of the South where you can't do it over a Zoom call. You can't do it over a Twitter. You got to get down there and talk to people.
Oh my gosh! Look, people keep thinking that you can do this thing by making a phone call and going online. It doesn't work like that. Some people, you need to see them, and they need to see and feel you.
Okay, I have
Yes.
Mr. Daly ready.
Great. And of course, I'll do the live read right after a quick look at the headlines.
Copy that.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, thank you everybody for more and more of you are heading over to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. How you doing, David? David?
I got him up.
Right here. How are you?
Okay, how you doing?
Good.
Good. You know, you're on, of course, with attorney Robert Patillo and Dwight McKee. You do know a Rainbow Push. Well, a lot of people are heading down there March 5th through the 7th, Selma, for that pilgrimage. We go every year. I didn't know if I told you about that. David, you might want to consider going.
You guys should come back down.
Yeah.
I almost drove over yesterday.
It'll be something. It'll be something. And in fact, Robert Patillo, attorney Robert Patillo. You know, Robert is here. Robert, why don't you reach out to David, because I think there's a real role for him down there in that, with all the work that he has
Absolutely
done.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. I'll reach out after the show.
Okay, fantastic.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm in Clara right now.
Robert, you're still looking for your test kits for COVID? Oh, boy.
One last night. We got a stack of them.
You got a stack of them? Bless your heart.
My wife is she's a hoarder, so before everyone else figured it out.
She's not a hoarder. She's a saver. She's a saver.
Hey, look, if you guys are looking for them, they're upstairs.
Look, you might need them in the fall.
Oh, honey, if my mother could fill the closet with them, she would. I mean, she collects it all. Daryl said he takes a lot of vitamin D3, C, and a multivitamin. Good for you. And try and do some walking and take care of your heart. Make sure you just need to be healthy. And Barbara Bacon said she got hers in less than a week of ordering. That's wonderful to know. That's wonderful to know. Hey, John and Dave Dowling and Linear Bob and Cedric. And is it Flora? That's right. How you doing, sweetie? How's everybody today? Jewel, Miss Robinson, sending you all much love. All right, we're going to get right back to it. Are you enjoying yourself, Dr. Shanina Knighton?
I am. Oh my gosh. I was about to say Attorney Patillo with that whole breakdown, right? Of just like the QAnons, the conspiracy theorists and everything. Like somebody asked me, they were like, well, why do you follow stuff like that? I'm like, if you don't know what all sides are thinking, saying,
30 seconds.
Doing, then you're at a disadvantage, even if you don't agree.
It's
so I can appreciate the fact that, he has that same perspective of needing to understand.
Mm-hmm. Honey, I listen to all the chitter chatter. I want to know. I mean, I want to know. I want to know what is shaping your thinking.
10 seconds.
Stand by, everybody.
change the world, change the world. Yes, we can. We can change the world. We can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Coming to you from WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station based here in Chicago, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I want you to meet me on my YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show channel, the Santita Jackson Show channel. And please like me on my official Facebook page, the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Santita Jackson and Friends, not Santita Jackson. Santita Jackson and Friends. I want to include you. They keep pushing people off the Santita Jackson page, everybody. It's not me, it's Facebook. They have a limit. They have a limit. So let's talk about January 6th, and let's talk about this COVID kickback. So many people really are not doing well financially. I mean, in food, housing, employment. Everybody's saying that the economy's back, but for most people, that's not true. Dr. Max Wolf is going to be talking to us about that at the bottom of the hour. And we're talking with Attorney Robert Patillo, Dr. Dwight McKee, and David Daly, brilliant New York Times bestselling author, about January 6th and what that means. He's also going to give us a little insight to what's happening in Alabama. I think all of this is connected. He is, of course, looking at our voting rights there. Let's get to some of these headlines, everybody. In Chicago, we'll have a high of 32 degrees, mostly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, a high of 35 degrees. Snow. The Dow closed up 305 points. Yesterday, the NASDAQ closed up 295 points. The S&P 500 closed up 65 points. In the NBA, the Timberwolves, well, they fell to the Kings. The Kings 132, the Timberwolves 119, but the Bulls were triumphant. The Bulls 121, the Hornets 104, and we had some more luck in Chicago on the sports front. Chicago 4, the Oilers 1 in the NHL, everybody. Have you been looking at the Olympics? Well, we had two heroes who emerged yesterday, two gold medalists, adding to America's medal count. We were 12th at the beginning of the week, and then we moved up to 7th. Now we're up to 5th in the medal count. And we have Nathan Chen, probably the most dominant male skater over the past 5 or 6 years. We have him to thank. He won his gold medal yesterday. And then Chloe Kim, and he's a Yale student. And Chloe Kim, I misstated in the last hour, she's not at Stanford. She is at Princeton. And this young lady won her consecutive Olympic gold in the snowboard half-pipe event. Indeed, she made history in doing so. We're so proud of these young people and all that they're doing. The National Archives, everybody, is asking the Department of Justice to investigate former President Trump's handling of White House records. Some people said that they found some of these records in the toilet. What is going on, everybody? Going to ask this distinguished panel that we have today about that, as more states are loosening coronavirus mask rules despite the CDC's reluctance to update guidelines. New York is lifting its statewide mask or vaccine requirements today for indoor businesses, following the lead of several states that have made similar changes. The latest data shows COVID-19 hospitalizations in the United States have dropped 38% from a few weeks ago. So those are some of the headlines. Could talk about even more, but let me put this one in. Economist Susan Collins, she's an academic, she's an economist, and she is the first Black woman to lead a Fed bank. She leads the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, everybody. She's adding diversity to the Fed's leadership. She will be the only second Black president and the first Black woman to head one of the 12 Fed banks in the century-plus history of the institution. She's currently the head of the University of Michigan, and we are so proud of her and excited that she has this opportunity. Congratulations, Susan Collins. Everybody, as we go into these treacherous economic times, I want you to know there is some hope. I want you to call Team Hochberg. Team Hochberg. Why? Because they want to help you to get a home, save your home. If you have poor credit, if you have no credit, if you have credit that has been destroyed because of debt, if you have high credit card bills, if you really are trying to find a path toward economic health, they are the people for you. I want you to call them at 855-563-2843, 56David, 855-56David or 56David.com. Are you tired of being a renter? Do you want to be a landlord? Do you see these 2 flats and 3 flats in your neighborhood and think that they are beyond your reach? Call Team Hochberg. They want to help you with that. In fact, they're coming together with banks to help pull together programs that will allow you to buy in your neighborhood, everybody. If you're purchasing a new home, refinancing your existing home, securing a VA loan or a reverse mortgage, you need to do what other people have done. Thousands of WCPT listeners have called Team Hochberg. They are your trusted local lender. Pete found all of these 5-star, hundreds of 5-star Google reviews, and after saving $800 a month after working with Team Hochberg. That's almost $10,000 a year, everybody. $800+ a month he saved because he reached out to Team Hochberg and they were able to get his finances together. He walked into a very responsive company, a very responsive team, and he thanks Team Hochberg and Mark Zinner in particular for telling everyone about uh, and he's telling everyone about this great experience. It can happen for you too, everybody. You do not have to lose your home. You don't have to not be a homeowner. You can actually buy some of these homes that are in need of repair in our neighborhoods. You can do that. The money is there, and they will work with you to make that happen. So call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or visit 56david.com and read over 200 5-star reviews by typing in Team Hochberg and find out all of the great things that they've been doing in the community. 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or 56david.com, 56david.com. Even Paula vouches for you. So I love it. I love it. I love it. Everybody, let's talk about what's been happening January 6th. And, very quickly, let me go to you, Pam, from the West Side. Pam, what's on your mind?
Good morning, Santita, and to your panel. I hear the urgency when you and the panel discuss January 6th. However, I'm not hearing the urgency from our elected officials. I think Biden should be making more of a statement. The DOJ is the people's law enforcement agency. Merrick Garland should be making more statements. But in addition to doing more, we see the truckers. Can you imagine if these were Latino and Black truckers? They would have the National Guard out on them. They would drop a bomb on them. And what about the emergency vehicles, Santita, that can't get through? Now we're having plants shut down second shift, food. Can you imagine the chaos that is being created? And we hardly hear a peep out of our Democratic elected officials.
Well, you know what? Let me say this to you about the truckers.
Sure.
One of the things that we're not hearing is their side. Okay, we're not hearing from them. So I would urge you, because this is primarily happening on the Canadian side. Now it's about to happen on the American side. We've had a lot of delays. We've had a lot of soft boycotts, Pam, in the United States. And I'm eager to bring Chuck Collins on from the Institute for Policy Studies to talk about really what's behind inflation. Because before we start blaming these truckers, we need to speak with them and find out what they're fighting for. Don't trust the corporate media on this one. Please don't. Just because they're not speaking to everybody. They're just not.
Well, right. I know I understand corporate media and that structure, but I'm just going by what I see. Yeah. I see that emergency vehicles can't get by.
Right.
And my statement was that if these were Latino and Black truckers protesting in the same manner, I have no objection to protesting. I know what its effect should be, Santita, but I'm saying if these were Black and Latino truckers, we know what the outcome would be. And in terms of inflation,
let's get to January 6th. I need to argue there.
No, you just talked about inflation.
No, I got you, but I need to argue there so we could get to the rest of the segment.
Okay, so for January 6th, it just seems to me that the Democratic elected officials aren't saying enough. It seems like the corporate businessmen aren't saying enough because part of them or many of them are complicit in this. And if you all could please comment about the corruption in that within the January 6th commission, but also just the representatives. We just had one of the representatives assaulted by another one who she simply asked him to wear a mask, and he pushed her and told her to kiss his butt. Have you all even had that conversation? So it's the criminal behavior of the January 6th committee and those representatives who were complicit in it, and sending that to their staff, the interns, and just assaulting other elected officials.
Well, it seems that we're having a reemergence of we're reliving history because we've had this kind of violence, unfortunately, on the floor of our legislative body in Washington before, Pam. It's just sad that we are here once again. Let me do a round robin before I get to David.
Thank you, and I'll hang up. Thanks,
Of course. Thank you. It's always a joy to hear from you, Pam. Robert, what do you make of what you heard from Pam?
Well, Pam makes very good and compelling points, and this is kind of what I was saying about them being able to create their own media, them being able to create their own message, them being able to create their own narrative, and because of that, them being able to create their own reality. Because in any other country, if you riot and you send your people to try to overturn and overthrow the government effectively, you get executed. I can't think of another country on earth where that's not the case. As much as these people on the right try to talk about the governments of other nations and so on and so forth, effectively Donald Trump turned into a terrorist leader on January the 6th. He was leading a group that was executed a terrorist attack on the Capitol. And if it had been effective, you don't think that if it had been effective and they had stopped the counting, Donald Trump would have walked into the Capitol as a conquering hero and would have had them rewrite the Constitution to enshrine him into power ultimately. Remember a few years, his first year in office, you have to pay attention to these things. His first year in office, Donald Trump went to meet with President Xi in China. It was right after they had made President Xi president for life, effectively, of China. And when Trump came back, he had glowing responses, saying that, they have a much better and more efficient system there. The best people get to stay in power. You don't have all these histrionics involving elections. You just get in power, you keep power, you push your agenda through. So there's always been this autocratic lean to him and his administration. Remember him meeting with Kim Jong-un and making sure that people understood how much he supported what he was doing there in North Korea. Remember him meeting with Putin in Helsinki when he met with the Saudis, where he put his hand on the glowing globe before they did their arms deal there. So there's been this tilt in the Republican Party over the last decade or so towards the cult of personality and towards authoritarianism, and they're attempting to drag the rest of us in it. And the problem is, just as the caller said, that we're not even putting up a fight.
Well, it's amazing.
Trying to defend our democracy.
Well, if I may interrupt you here, it's like we're back to the beginning of, the fight for the republic, because that's what we had to first decide. We were not going to be colonies of Great Britain. You had the royalists. You had a real strain of people of those in the colonies who really were loyal to the crown. We had a real fight on the ground. And it seems to me that we're still in that fight. Just, let me run over to David Daly, because David, if you don't mind, Robert Patillo and Dwight McKee. David, you are in Alabama, and you've been talking about from your book, Rat Effed to Unrigged, this plan to really essentially, overtake the government. I mean, minority rule. That is what the Republicans have been doing. And it seems like the Democrats haven't fought back.
No, I think that's right. Good morning, Santita. I agree wholeheartedly with everything Robert just said. We are heading towards a system of competitive authoritarianism in this nation. When I mentioned Hungary on this show a couple of months ago, I think you gasped at me. But I mean, I really think that that's the kind of government that the Republican Party is most enamored of at this moment. Is the kind of Hungarian Viktor Orban style autocracy, and they are working step by step to make elections functionally no longer matter. And I understand that I sound a little bit like a crazy person as I say this, but it's happening before our very eyes, and we're not doing anything really to try and prevent it. We have Republican legislatures around the country that have gerrymandered themselves into power that cannot effectively be taken away from them at the ballot box. They have installed judges at every level of the system that are willing to hold up their laws on elections, on reproductive rights, on an entire swath of public policy that does not have public support. You have a gerrymandered U.S. House. You have a U.S. Senate that has got 50 Democrats and 50 Republicans, but the 50 Democrats represent 41 million more people. You have at every level of our government this baked-in minoritarianism that favors the white, rural, conservative Republican interests, and they are chipping away at the integrity of our elections while trying to gaslight the rest of us into believing that there's some sort of election fraud problem that there's zero proof for. And then they have an entire media propaganda apparatus that beams this into people's brains 24 hours a day. We are in dangerous, dangerous times.
Dwight McKee, your thoughts?
Mine are the same. Is that it's going to be, and we can just get ready to make the adjustment, a rule by the minorities. It's for them. Democracy is a means to an end. It's not an end to itself. We see democracy as an end unto itself.
That is the goal, right? We think that democracy is the goal. And you're like, no.
Democracy is a means to an end, and the goal is to be in charge. They have power. So if democracy works, so be it. If it does not work, then they make the adjustment. Guy said the other day, we're gonna do by any means necessary, whether it's democratic or not. It is power is the ultimate dynamic with them. And the real danger of all this, David and Robert, is that the Democrats, the president, Biden, they are afraid to arrest Trump. He really should be arrested for sedition. And all of the laws are in their favor, but it is really fear. They're afraid if they arrest him that it will create havoc and a civil war. And there's a lot to be said for that. And so he's the ultimate threat. But what makes him a threat is he has a constituency of a lot of people who are armed who sees him as the victim in this and see themselves as protecting the republic and protecting democracy and protecting the American way of life.
What's your closing thought, Robert Patillo? I mean, well, hold on. Can you all stay with me just a couple of minutes on the other side of the break? Because I just if you don't mind, as we bring on Dr. Wolf, I'm sure he'll have something to say about this as well. It's ironic to me that you're speaking to us from Alabama today. David, you're down there to do what? We have a couple of minutes.
Well, earlier this week, you had a decision by the U.S. Supreme Court that effectively allowed the racial gerrymandering of Alabama's congressional districts to go into effect. But also, it is the latest assault on the Voting Rights Act. This is likely going to lead to a 5-4 or 6-3 decision in the next year that thoroughly winds back what's left of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. The court has already done great damage to Section 2 in the Brnovich versus Arizona case last year. They, of course, undermined Section 5 in the Shelby County case a decade ago. And so this is really it feels like this John Roberts court, which has been chipping away at the beating heart of the Voting Rights Act for the last decade, is really close to its goal of stilling that heart.
Robert, do you see a connection between, the dialing back on our voting rights and what happened at the Capitol? I have 1 minute.
Absolutely. This is all part of that same 20-plus year strategy. Republicans realized in the late 80s they can no longer get a majority of the American people on their side. So they figured out how to start changing the rules over time. In the same way that they've been working for 50 years to overturn Roe versus Wade. From the minute the Voting Rights Act was signed into law, they've been working to take that away because that's how they can maintain control in this country. Then January 6th was about returning control to the people that they think rightfully should control America.
Stay right here. We're talking about this, and we're talking about COVID and how it has absolutely ripped apart people and this economy, how inequality is now we've not seen inequality this great since the Second World War. We have more billionaires than ever. In fact, their numbers have gone up exponentially. But we have more poor people than ever before. How can that be? What's going on, everybody? How is it that the pharmaceutical companies are making $1,000 a second? $1,000 a second. How does that work? How does that work? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Ooh. Oh, boy.
We are all rainbows and unicorns and hearts this year.
You know what? This is a whole lot to really, and I know people want to talk about this. So if you all could stay with me just for a few more minutes. And I'm going to ask Dr. Wolf about this.
Just driven off the side of the road. They're driving off of bridges right now.
You know, but I do you think that we're taking this as seriously as we need to?
No, if we were taking it as serious as we need to, there would be Nuremberg-style tribunals. We're nowhere close. We've turned this into a sideshow.
We're ignoring it. Not only are we ignoring it, but...
Okay, I have Mrs. Wells ready. Still working on Dr. Wolf.
Okay.
Called it legitimate political discourse this week, and just about all of them lined up and agreed. So January 6th, to them, was not an insurrection. It was legitimate political discourse.
Yeah, I
think we have to get our heads around that.
And look, Santita, I'll give you an example of just how ridiculous and toxic our media sphere is right now. On the one hand, you have the actual attempted overthrow of the United States government. If they had overthrown the election, they would have had to rewrite the Constitution. We would have had to have a convention of states, effectively, in order to solidify power. We would have ended the first American republic and went into whatever would have happened thereafter. That's the inexorable result of what would have happened if they had won, the end of the American republic. So they've turned that into legitimate political discourse. On the other hand, you have a program put in place to help drug addicts not die. and the conservative media reports it as Joe Biden is giving crack pipes.
Okay, I also have Dr. Wolf.
People just ran with it, and that's been all over social media and right-wing media for the last 2 days. They create their own reality regardless of facts. That's a very difficult place to be in politically, where you can just invent your own facts and a third of the country will believe it.
Dr. Wolf?
It ends the possibility of conversation. It ends the possibility of any kind of shared objective reality. It ends the idea of truth.
I think it's awful. I mean, to put it plainly. And it's, and I think that we have been so misdirected and let down by corporate media because they have made this about personalities, and they don't look at this as a threat to the Republican, therefore themselves, that this is. All you have to do is look at these truckers to the north. There is a spirit out here. The zeitgeist is people are on the edge. Be very, very clear. And there are a whole lot of moving parts here. Dr. Wolf, how are you?
Pretty good. As usual, I think you're very good. I think way over the edge might also be
1 minute.
Description.
Well, you know what? Would you mind weighing in here? Because we've got David Daly, Dwight McKee, and attorney Robert Patillo, as we pivot to you. But would you mind weighing in on January 6th? We've been talking about that. David is down in Alabama as we speak. Hello, hello. Okay, I'm trying to make sure.
Hi, how are you?
Not getting feedback. Okay. Yeah, but it's a real issue.
30
for
seconds.
us. Hold on. Everybody, if you want to come to the Selma Montgomery March Jubilee celebration, please call 773-FREEDOM. 773-FREEDOM at Rainbow Push so that you can get on the bus. It's a great trip, March 5th through the 7th. And of course, I'm going to bring you on tomorrow to talk about what's going to be happening down there. And if you could, before we close out, Robert, please tell us why we should go.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. We've got a lot to talk about today. We've got a lot to talk about this. All of the billionaires who had a great time during COVID. Inequality is the greatest that it's been since the Second World War. And people are struggling with their food, with their rent, with their mortgages. They're losing their houses. They're having employment hardships. That is something that Dr. Max Wolf wanted to talk about today. And I want you to weigh in with Dwight McKee and David Daly, New York Times bestselling author from Fair Vote and Southeastern Regional Director of Rainbow Push, as we have been weighing in on January 6th and what's not being discussed here. I mean, because you were saying, before I go to you, Dr. Wolf, David Daly, you said we are really moving into minoritarianism, if you will, minority rule. I mean, as we are becoming a more pluralistic society. I mean, look, during slavery, many of the slave states had more black people than white people, okay? But now America's truly becoming just everybody. But what did you mean by that we're moving into really a state of minority rule?
No, it's very true. I spent some time yesterday afternoon at the Legacy Museum in Montgomery, and if you all find yourselves in Montgomery and haven't been there, it's an incredibly powerful museum on the history of slavery and its legacy, and that's one of the things that is very clear is in Florida, in Mississippi, in many of these states, what you had in these days of slavery and after the Civil War were black majorities in many of these states. And what they came up with, even post 14th and 15th Amendments, were systems and election laws that perpetuated white minority rule, and that did so effectively, right, for the next 120 years until the passage of the Voting Rights Act, finally begins the process of trying to make us an actual democracy in 1965, and now they're chipping away at the Voting Rights Act across all of these states, of course. But what I mean by minority rule is that white, rural, conservative Republican interests will have captured every institution and then changed the rules so that we still have elections, but that the elections don't actually matter because they can't change control of the institution. So if you've drawn districts in such a way that one side always wins, even when they have fewer votes, you can hold as many elections as you want. You just can't change anything. If you have a U.S. Senate that is set up in such a way that with the filibuster and with small states having as many, with Wyoming and California having the same number of senators, even though it's, 75 times more people in California, you've got a system set up that allows a veto power on everything. And as we saw earlier this year, when you try to pass voting rights, you can have a small segment of the country block that for everybody. And when that minoritarianism is locked into the Supreme Court, into the Senate, into the House, into the presidency via the Electoral College, and our state legislatures through gerrymandering, it is almost checkmate. And so at this very moment that we have, that the census shows, right, that we are becoming a multiracial nation, the question is whether we can ever achieve the reality of becoming a multiracial democracy.
Well, I know we're moving toward the economy, but you always have so many brilliant insights. Dr. Max Wolf, of course, every Thursday is here with us. And as we start to talk about just how people have gotten hit by COVID and just the widening of the inequality that is just, my goodness, it's at historic levels. Something's got to be done about this. What do you make of what's happened with January 6th? I mean, the investigations, I mean, the question is this insurrection? Is it sedition? Is it treason? Why hasn't anyone really been charged with treason? We're just getting around to sedition. Wow, just sedition. What do you make of all of this?
Yeah, so I think in the January 6th, what's interesting is how we got this response. What actually happened isn't that much of a mystery, right? We had a violent coup attempt that was unsuccessful because it was as profoundly incompetent as it was angry and violent. But last time I checked, and again, I'm not one of your attorney friends, brutal incompetence is not a get-out-of-jail-free card, right? So if you try to rob a bank and you forget your gun and everyone laughs at you, you're still a bank robber. You just don't have that much more money. So it was an organized act of violent treason, one of several, actually, which has now been revealed by a defeated president who thought he could win again with even fewer votes, having lost the popular vote the first time, too, speaking of minoritarian. And look, I think it is a creature of a lot of things. It's a creature of the small range of opinion that large news outlets give a lot of voice to. And it's a news cycle, which I call the age of false equivalence, right? So it's, hey, there's problems in both parties. True, right? One just had a violent coup attempt, and the other one has a hard time getting on the same page about message, right? Yeah, okay, this is true that both of your kids have led full lives but had difficulties, and one of them is a serial killer, and the other one has a bunch of parking tickets. Right? So I think the equivalence is a bit of an issue. I think the equivalence is false, but it makes for a good show because two people going down to the wire, Clash of Titans is a great show. And it's a good point-counterpoint if it's entertainment you're after or just sort of buzz. But I don't think it describes the reality. In terms of the politics and the economy, they've always had this problem, which is it's always been minority rule, right? So, I mean, again, I'm sure you have all thought of this, and perhaps I missed it earlier, but obviously if you introduce the fact that women weren't really allowed to vote until 1920, and there have been lots of abridgments of those votes, including acts or threats of violence, our experiment with participatory democracy is a small minority of the number of years we've had as a country, right? So the lack of majority representation is the norm. Not a norm I think we should accept. My point isn't that that's okay because it's historical. My point is that the majority of Americans have been actively forbidden from exercising the rights we think make us American for most of the years of our republic, which again is not an advertisement for accepting it on a go-forward basis. And I guess making the bridge to the economic, because we auction off the right to run to the highest bidder, we've already introduced minoritarian wealth power before we get to the constrained gerrymandered voting. Because you have to be appealing to and or already quite affluent to run for major office.
Oh,
so there's already an economic primary before there's a primary, and then before there's a general election where there's another economic kind of contest that runs ahead of the political contest, because if you don't get your word out and your materials out and your folks to knock on doors and everything, and so this is sort of difficult, right? And I think what we've seen is that we loved fair trade and we force-fed it to everybody at gunpoint until we weren't the best, and then we decided it was cheating. And maybe democracy is kind of being re-examined through the same funhouse mirror as free trade by some of the same folks. And, just one thing to add, because of the way we vote in America, a minority of people, a really distinct, a very small minority of people, pick the leaders of our Congress. And because of the Electoral College, they often pick the president. And so now we see where the majority of people in the country vote for the Democratic Party and the Republicans get the majority of seats in the houses, and then often for the presidency as well. Outraged. So the moral outrage that they only got, they got almost 6 million fewer votes, Republicans, but they're not the president. The moral outrage turning to violence gives you an idea. That is a metric of entitlement weighed in blood and loss.
Amen to that. I mean, let me go to some of these callers. There's a lot of people want to weigh in on this. Let me go to you, Renee. Renee from the West Side.
Oh, thanks for taking my call. I just walked up the 2 flights of stairs, so I'm out of breath.
Do you want me to put you on hold and go and come back?
Okay. Because I have to start work in a minute. But, as I look around, as I look at how we're losing our rights, and as I look back over the last 30 years, I see that the Democrats have been in charge of the White House and have had Congress during some of that time for 17 of those years. So it makes me feel like maybe the Democrats have been complicit in some of what the Republicans have been doing to take away our rights, because there have been times, including in the last year, when they could have made changes, but they haven't done that. And we had a Supreme Court justice who, instead of stepping down to let the current president put somebody in her spot when she had cancer already, but she wanted to hold out so she could put one particular woman. She wanted to swear in one particular woman, so she didn't step down. And that tells me that people care more about things other than securing our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it's not just the Republicans. We have a whole lot of Democrats making a whole lot of money from corporations where they actually represent them over the people that they're actually supposed to represent. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you. Well, corporatists are Democrat and Republican. I think that's one of the great revelations that we have right now, Dr. Wolf.
I'm not sure that that's a new reality, but look, there are folks.
No, but for some people it is. For some people it is.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. This is how we see the Democrats one way. I mean, we really can see our politics through this partisan lens, and it's a lot deeper than that.
For sure, there are people of conscience in both parties and people who are reprehensible in both parties, for sure. look, I do think that once you auction off the seats, we have this weird American thing that we do, which I think is actively counterproductive, where we decide the individuals are flawed. And true, occasionally we do have in our political leadership some specimens that are hard not to stare at on a human level. But if it keeps happening and it happens this widespread, then you know that it is actually systemic, right? So yes, some of these folks may not be exemplary in all regards, but the truth is what we ask of our politicians is impossible. So we ask these politicians to auction off their votes, to get elected, to get money, and then be saints, right? And perhaps that request is the problem as much as anyone's failures to meet up to it.
When you're asking them to be saints in the midst of all the wickedness and the corruption, I think that you might.
If you're holding the auction gavel, it's possible that you're not a reverend, right?
Well, do you have do you connect? And you know,
Or you are a certain kind of reverence that we produce in great numbers as well.
You know, I just let me bring on Mrs. Wells, Chappelle Wells. We were supposed to get you at the bottom of the hour, but I know you want to weigh in on this.
Yes, Santita. I just think I agree with what Renee was saying, that the reality is that we're fighting against ourselves. So, you know, like we've always been preaching lately, that Biden could make these executive orders in order to protect voting rights, but he has chosen not to do it thus far. So he knows the ramifications of him not putting together these voting rights executive orders. So he knows that, you know, there are going to be fewer Black people voting. He knows that the racists, we may lose the House and the Senate. He knows that. And all the Democrats in the Senate and the House also know it. So they are all complicit in this deceit of the American right to vote. And so my thing is that it won't change. It's only going to get worse unless we continue to push them to do what is right. So we have to continue to fight, Santita. And so I have no confidence in either side. I only have confidence in the American people to push the agenda, and we have to keep enforcing it every single day.
Well, you know, I think that's the beauty of the system. I mean, it is imperfect as human beings, and things that are made of human hands are. These things are imperfect, but you know, Dr. King often said that, you know, in America we have the right to fight for the right. We have the right to march for the right. We have those rights, but if we do not pay attention, we will lose those rights. That's why I really tried to push back against a lot of the disparaging discussions that we have about people who are protesting peacefully, even when they're disruptive, but you can still be peaceful. We've got to start talking. We've got to start talking to each other, everybody, and start listening, because everybody knows that something is rotten in Denmark. No one wants to talk about it. Chappelle, I want you to wait here because I'm going to give you a couple of minutes before we get out so you can talk about this wonderful event that you're having, the Courtney Copeland Memorial Gala. Well, you know, why don't you tell us about that right now before you go?
Yes, Santita, thanks so much. On March 5th, we are actually doing a memorial charity ball for the Courtney Copeland Memorial Foundation. The funds that we gather basically support our programs for our Lotus Blocking program that helps mothers deal with trauma, as well as also we send kids to college with our college grants, as well as also we do a book bag giveaway, as well as also a Christmas toy giveaway every year. So these basic things that we do at the Courtney Copeland Memorial Foundation help not only people in the community, but it also helps keep Courtney's memory alive. So we continue to ask everyone to go to Eventbrite, keyword Courtney Copeland Memorial Foundation, and we ask you to give us a call at 708-526-4546. 708-526-4546. Thank you so much, Santita.
What about these vittles for the Super Bowl? Wait a minute.
Yes, today, Santita, is the last day to actually place your order for the Super Bowl. We are making some deliveries on Sunday. We have your hot wings, your honey barbecue wings, your sweet and sour wings, your meatballs, your sliders, your Italian beef sandwiches, Cajun pasta, Cajun rice, mac and cheese, everything that you would need, as well as also your sweets, your peach cobbler, your banana pudding, your cakes, whatever you need for your holiday party. Don't hesitate to give us a call, 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. Thanks so much, Santita.
Of course. Now, wait a minute, because I'm waiting on my order. How about that? Dr. Wolf, I promise you, we are going to get to, not today, looking at the economy's effect on our food and housing and employment hardships, because people are really struggling out here. But, we're also struggling with this. I'm really surprised by, the volume of calls that we have about January 6th. Before I go, before I get back to you, Dr. Wolf, why do you think people are concerned about this, Robert Patillo? The media, they're making this, it's personality driven, but it seems that people feel like something is not quite right.
Well, this is what happens when you have a crime and nobody's brought to justice. The perpetrators of the crime are still running around. They're still free. The killer is still in the house. You should leave. And I think that's the reason that people are concerned, because we all saw this and understood it. It was a dry run. That was a practice attack. That those people were incompetent. What happens when you give them 4 additional years to plan it? What happens when you allow them to continue to insert themselves into state governments around the country? This is why the gerrymandering and redistricting conversation is so important. You have a state like Georgia, where you have a 35% African-American population. You have 2 Democratic senators and one of the largest congressional black caucus delegations in the country. But on the state level, you have a Republican supermajority in the House, the Senate, and all statewide offices. How the hell does that happen? It happens when you start redrawing lines in such a way that it doesn't matter how many people are in the state. It doesn't matter how many people vote for one side versus the other. You control the levers of power. So they're inserting themselves into state legislatures around the country. They're taking away the right to vote in places like Georgia, Texas, Florida, all around the country through voter suppression laws. So the next time that these people come back, there's going to be nothing there to stop them. And if you don't have another Mike Pence-style vice president, who exactly is going to run up there and tell the vice president that they cannot swear in their own electors? I was at the Georgia State Capitol when they were having the meeting to send their alternative slate of electors to Washington. What do you do the next time when they actually execute it? And what mechanisms of government are there to stop that from happening? Is the National Guard going to step in? No, we saw on January 6th that there were National Guard people opening the gates. Is the military going to step up? We don't know, and that's why people are so anxious, and Congress is doing nothing to hold these people accountable.
Max, you have state after state after state who are rolling back voting rights, and they are gerrymandering Republicans into power. This is
the Alabama Supreme Court decision. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because what's happening in Georgia can happen all over the country, and we would be powerless to stop it, because you'll have Republican-led legislatures that will allow it, that will sanction it. I have about 3 minutes left. They belong to you.
But look, this is one of these fundamental choices, a little bit like dealing with a pandemic, right? Where you can either decide to take a road toward the place you want to go, or you can backslide terribly. And this is a giant temper tantrum, right? So it's not just that he's often bediapered, but the former president has been engaged in a temper tantrum, which is, I can't lose. My mommy and daddy told me that I could buy it and I can't lose. And a lot of people for whom he's the alter ego, because they know they can lose, they just have to look at their diary to check up on those stats, they've decided that he's their magical deliverance. And so long as that happens, you're going to have to probably fight it out, right? And I think there's been an effort to avoid that, which makes sense. It's the high road, but I don't know if it works. To me, at least as disturbing as the elector story, although that was pretty disturbing, was a story about the district attorney in Atlanta who needs FBI police protection because she had the crazy idea of doing her job. and holding people accountable if they were trying to undermine the democratic process in her county and in her state, right? To me, that is an even worse sign because it begins to suggest that folks have an organized approach of doing by violence and intimidation, which I think is what that convoy of trucks is doing too, what they have failed to do through the democratic process. And if you attempt the democratic process and it doesn't work, your only lawful, legitimate enterprise is to reattempt the democratic process, right? It's not to decide to try something else. Because as soon as, like, we believe in democracy when we get who we want, or we believe in the free market when our stuff sells better than their stuff, you're in sort of Lord of the Flies territory.
But I think that's where we are. I mean,
yeah, but I think this country's in pretty close to imploding on a lot of these things. Now, who knows what form it'll take? We've been close and dodged the bullet. Certainly would hope for that again. No need for it to go that way. But part of what I think makes me nervous is that we're certainly at an urgent and perilous moment. And the majority of people who we need to do the right thing and who want to do the right thing have decided that we're not there. It's too painful. It's too upsetting. So they've decided that we're not that close to the edge. And that is kind of the lesson of history, right? When good people don't pay attention or when useful idiots take the low road, that's when cataclysmic negative, backward motion comes. And as much as it's exciting that we're within sort of sightline of a better future, what some of us might be excited about, I think other folks find quite terrifying.
But what's tragic is that we didn't recognize the attack upon the Republic and our aspirations toward democracy when Black people were attacked, as Indigenous people have been attacked. Eventually, everyone would be attacked. This is not new. This is America 101. And we have got to do right, not just do better. I want you to, if you want to hear this show without the commercials, please go to the podcast, WCPT820.com/Santita. WCPT820.com/Santita. And stay right here on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Going to get some closing thoughts. Well, just a few more thoughts from Dr. Wolf and Robert Patillo, if you can stay with me for just a few more minutes. And Dwight McKee, want to get your closing thoughts. Just stay right there. Stay right there, everybody. Matt, thank you for a great show, everybody. My Morning Stars, thank you all for being with us. Stay right here. It gets a little fiery and peppery on the Santita Jackson Show after show. Okay. I love you, everybody. God bless you. Let's change the world for the better and make it right. God bless.
Change the world. Change the world. We're gonna change the world. We can change the world. Change the world. Yeah.
Dwight, what have you been hearing? I need you to respond to what you have heard from Robert and from Dr. Wolf.
I've heard consistency. I mean, it's always been the rules. The rules have always been set up in such a way that to maintain white superiority. When Lou Alcindor played basketball for 3 years, he was a dominant player in college basketball. They barred the dunk. It was illegal to dunk in college basketball when he was a dominant player. When Lou Brock was striking everybody out, they lowered the mound. When Tiger began to win the tournament, they began to adjust the length of the courses to give these other guys a chance to win.
To beat him.
It's always been a system where if the people in charge would change the rules to give them a competitive advantage, because you always have to maintain that illusion of superiority, of dominance, of them being in charge. And so again, as long as we understand that for the people in power, that democracy is a means to an end and not an end to itself, that the end is power, domination, and them being in charge, then we're not surprised. Again, I always say, when they define us as three-fifths of a human being, our other 2/5 went and it went to them. So they have their 5/5 and our 2/5. So they will always be twice or have twice the power, twice the impact, twice the momentum that we have. And so what it looks like now is we have twice the vote, but they have twice the representation. It's built into the system of the country.
Robert Patillo, are you still there? Oh, well, please, well, anyone who wants to jump in, please feel free. Dr. Wolf?
Yeah, my point was, I think the way you get rid of the Electoral College is that we run Snoop Dogg. He loses the popular vote. He wins the Electoral College, and it's gone the next morning.
Not if he's a Republican.
I think maybe even if he's a Republican, we'd have a shot.
I don't know, because this is how the game is played. Because now you're seeing black celebrities used in a particular way.
Of course.
Yeah,
this is not my serious plan for voter rights.
I'm glad about that, Max. Thank you for that. I mean, Robert
Although
Patillo?
I would not think he would be anywhere near the worst president we'd ever have.
Maybe. Maybe. I mean, this is a mess. Robert?
My only point to be one on Selma. Rainbow Push will be organizing both in the Midwest and throughout the state of Georgia, Alabama, the Southeast for that weekend for the Rainbow Push Day at the Selma Montgomery March, which is going to be on Monday, March the 7th. As plans firm up, we plan things at the last minute. So as things firm up, we'll be providing more information. So make sure you go to rainbowpush.com, call 1-800-FREEDOM, or email me to get more information about attending the march. I'm going to be doing a road trip throughout the Southeast next week, starting Tuesday, leaving out of Atlanta, going down through Georgia and Alabama, ending in Lakeland, Florida on the 20th, talking to pastors and students, getting them to rally together to come out to Selma so that we can, we believe President Biden will come, then we want to make sure that we can present a strong face, a strong front to him, that he needs to address voting rights. He needs to do executive action on voting, on criminal justice reform, on the agenda that we voted for him for. And I think the reason this is crucial, tying into January 5th, is that if we do not have a protected right to vote, we see what the conservative Supreme Court is going to do. We've had the Shelby case, getting rid of pre-clearance. We have the decision from this week or from last week, allowing for unlimited gerrymandering and redistricting. The right to vote is being chipped away bit by bit, and they're distracting us with propaganda and lies in the media. So we need to present and let the White House know that above all other electoral issues, I don't care about repealing the gas tax. I don't care about the hermeneutics going on and some of the other parts. The agenda has to be the right to vote, because the right to vote is dispositive of all other rights. So we want to change any other policy apparatus. You have to give individuals the ability to decide on their leadership.
Maureen Forte, send your information so we can put that out there as well. But go to 773-FREEDOM, 773-FREEDOM, so that you can get on these buses that we have at Rainbow Push. So you can go to that. I hope we'll go to the lynching museum down there, Robert. I think that would be well worth our while.
Absolutely.
There are lots of activities, I know, but I think that would be a very important thing to do. Very important thing to do. Very, very important. I just please everybody think about going to Selma. Think about that pilgrimage to Selma. I think it's important for you to see what Selma looks like today. I think you need to see the Edmund Pettus Bridge. I think you need to cross over it. I think you need to see this little town that is virtually unchanged since that time, and see how these people changed the world. Mrs. Amelia Boynton, we will always owe her a tremendous debt of gratitude for reaching out to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and asking him to come here. Please, we've got a problem. We're trying to get registered to vote. We will always owe Jimmy Lee Jackson. And this was a veteran who was trying to get people registered to vote. These men came back, and women, black men and women, came back from the Second World War, and they said, we cannot fight fascism abroad and be treated this way. As black people in America, because this is racism here. 101. The color line is real in the United States. That's all that we've got. W.E.B. Du Bois said it. So we can't come here. We almost didn't go to this war in the first place because you're lynching us. I got to cross on the other side of the street when a white person is in front of me. I mean, come on, really? You need to see that, and you need to go by Jimmy Lee Jackson's headstone, his marble headstone, Max, and see all of the bullet marks in the headstone. People routinely drive by his headstone today and shoot at it. That's what they do. You need to see that. You need to see that lonely alley where they took the life of Reverend James Reed, took him from his wife and children. You need
Why
to
do
see
they do
that.
this? Is this
Hmm?
for national security reasons?
Honey, let me tell you, you need to go down there. Because when you
Dimitri?
see it, you really, that's what I was telling you. You don't really understand America until you go to the Selmas, until you go to the Montgomerys, till you go to Midland, Michigan. Because that's, it's America. There's one America in urban America, and there's another America elsewhere. And that's where you see the color line. That's where you see real class lines. That's where you see where we really are fundamentally as a people when you go to those places. Dwight McKee?
Yes.
So your thoughts. I mean, where do we go from here? We've been talking about January 6th. I mean, in fact, I can't wait to have Dr. Wolf. He is always so generous with his time and so generous with his spirit, because we were going to be talking about something that we do need to talk about. These economic hits that people are taking, because the fact is, when I listen to the news early in the morning, I hear the news. Well, I hear the television anchors. They're cheering on the economy, which I'm glad, but they're cheerleaders for it. I said, but you're not talking about how people are living out here. People are really in a lot of pain, and it's like y'all are just purposefully going past that. I mean, what?
Well, I think we have to look at a couple of things in how they play out. One is I think we have to take a real look at what's happening in Canada with this convoy and the impact it's going to have on our economy. And if the workers here assume that as a strategy to help close down the country, I think we have to look at that. I think we have to look at the Ukraine and those mercenaries that's been armed in the Ukraine. And if that battle does not go, does not become a real war, then that crowd is coming back home and becomes an extended army for Trump and the Republicans and that crowd, and will be heavily armed and trained militarily. They will become the new Al-Qaeda. And then the last thing we have to look for is I think that Putin is really in the Ukraine giving Trump cover to say that he's the only one I can really deal with and negotiate. Biden is really inadequate, and I think that he is threatening war, but not for the purposes of having a war, but to give more credibility to Trump to say, Trump and I have the kind of relationship that we can negotiate and he can make this go away, because I think ultimately they want Trump in charge so Trump can go back to dismantling NATO. So that I think all of these things will play, a significant role in how the right in the next 4 years come back and position themselves to ultimately, I think, to take over the government, either democratically or militarily, depending on what they need to do.
Do you think
I think they're very...
Do you think that they would seek out a military solution? Is that, I mean, do you believe? I mean, because it seems like that is not. It seems like that is what these 4 generals, these retired generals, these Pentagon generals have said.
I think it's not possible. I think it's part of the strategy. I think absolutely. I think they're being armed to come back, and I think that again, under the guise of protecting the democracy, they don't see themselves as being insurrectionists. They see themselves as protecting democracy, protecting they really see themselves as the ultimate patriots. And that's what makes them so profoundly dangerous, because they'll wrap themselves up in that flag and say that God has ordained us to keep running this thing, and that this is the land of the free, the home of the brave. We being the free and we being the brave, and everybody else take your rightful place behind us.
Or underneath me. Underneath my feet. Oh, yeah.
Underneath my knee.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, yes. I mean, are you still there, Robert?
I am, and I agree with Dwight completely, except that I don't think this is anything we have to guess about. They tell us. One thing I will give Trump credit for is that he says the quiet part out loud. As though he was having a speech before the 2020 election, and he said, well, we've got the truckers, we've got the military, we've got the bikers, we've got the law enforcement on our side, and we're ready to rumble. That is a quote from President Trump. So it's not as if he's, making his guess to do this kind of kabuki theater around it. He is telling you that his people are there. They are ready. We saw on January 6th, those people were ready to rumble. And I think they realized that coming there unarmed with flags and pepper spray and stuff, that wasn't enough. So when they come back, they're going to come back ready to fully overthrow the government. And it seems that we have a feckless Democratic Party that's not ready to do anything about it because they're so worried about losing an election or losing, their donors and their power base, that they're willing to lose the country over. So we have to get braver people in control and in office. Otherwise, we're simply going to allow these people to run roughshod, and we're not going to have a country left to defend.
I mean, Dr. Wolf, what do you see?
Yeah, so I think lots of good ideas here. I think I might see some of the international stuff a little bit different. So, like, I see Putin as he's the leadership model that Trump would be if he was more competent and together and intellectually fortified. So Putin represents the choice of looking strong and acting strong over being strong. And that is exactly what this segment of the right has chosen. It's the morbidly obese guy wheezing with a $3,000 rifle, right? So it's look strong, don't do the work to be strong. And the piece that I think is the decision piece, and maybe I just think this because I'm of a limited intellectual capacity and an economist, so I always think the economy is important, is that American big business has done very well in this world of multicultural democratic leadership. And the wealthy have done very well. And a lot of what's funding this is big business, but it's a subset of, it's really like the deranged billionaires club. But since we just sell the politics, their intensity and willingness to throw around their vast resources has an outsized impact. So if you're an American transnational company, right, and I always like the joke, it's not mine, but the joke that American politicians should wear those NASCAR suits. Because they're really just sponsored by, Wonder Bread and ExxonMobil and JP Morgan. They should have to wear those suits, right? At least the NASCAR guys, you kind of know. All right, this guy's driving for Exxon and Wonder Bread, and that guy's driving for Sunoco and Northrop Grumman. Like, it seems kind of honest in a weird way. Might make the aesthetic a little bit more appealing, but the idea I like, right? I mean, I think conceptually anyway. And those guys will lose their money. So see, already brand America has taken a beating. And the reason Putin and other people around the world like Donald Trump is Donald Trump has savaged American prestige and power. Because in order to look strong, he has made us very weak. And if you're Russia and you're afraid of China, which they are, and if you're afraid of the United States and NATO, then watching the United States hollow itself out, lose its relationships, and crater its historical alliances is manna from heaven. Watching the United States fight China is also good, because if Russia basically makes what's left of its living off of its sort of blurry lines between the mafia and the government, should remind you of Donald Trump there, right? And extractive industries, basically selling natural resources to the much more functional and advanced Chinese economy. Some of those natural resources, non-trivial portions of them, are land taken from the Chinese by the Russians when Russia was industrialized first. Russia, Japan, and China have tried to control the East. And so at some point, the smarter Russians know that selling things to an increasingly more powerful China, some of which are dug up from land that was once China, might have some risks associated with it. Right? Also, if most of your money comes from fossil fuels that will either kill off all life on the planet or be replaced by renewables, the clock is ticking. I feel like the white supremacist political far right is a little bit like that too. They are no longer needed to assure big business against the encroachment of an organized left, which is usually how they're brought into power. Now, it is true that they tend to be brought into power to quash an imaginary far left or minority group, and then they go berserk and it becomes the guard dog that kills the owner, which is a historical repeat motif, right? What I think is interesting is that the people who seem to care most and take the greatest risk are the people who are trying to force America back to an idealized and wholly fictional version of the past. And you know it's a fiction because it always starts with a guy who is never really on top, who wants to go back to when he was on top. And that's usually the tip that you're dealing with somebody who's involved in a violent fantasy. But those people are dangerous. And, as my grandparents, who came very close to being killed with most of their family, like to tell us growing up, smart, subtle people are never the ones who kill us. Right? And the people who look down on the people who wanted to put them in the ground, they're in the ground. Pay attention.
Absolutely. I'm just wondering if we're paying attention.
We're not.
Yeah.
We're definitely not, right? We're much more worried about really important celebrity gossip and sports news and, all the usual stuff.
And these people are plotting and planning. And Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said, as evil men plot, good men must plan. And that's why we bring these issues to you every day, everybody. Because you have to start thinking critically. If you want to be in something other than a republic, if you want to be in a constitutional monarchy, taking a step back, if you want to be in an absolute monarchy, stepping a step back from that, just don't participate. We're headed in that direction. Remember when President Trump came in, he said we should become honorary members of the British Commonwealth. I said, OMG, who is this? Are you serious? You cannot be serious. I'm supposed to be a colony again? What? Oh my gosh. It was just a suggestion. But he put it out there. You've got to get involved, everybody. We've got to fight for the Republic, Elena. For the Republic. As you said, Dwight, democracy, it's a means. It's not the end. At least that's not the oligarchs, that's not their idea. They'll use whatever by any means necessary. They got upset when Malcolm said it, but that's what they do, by any means necessary. This is very, 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 very dangerous. I mean, it's very, very dangerous what's happening here. I'm going to get some closing thoughts from you wonderful gentlemen. I'm going to have you on last. Excuse me, Dr. Wolf, I'm trying to read something else. And let me start with you, Dwight.
I think that we have to be ever vigilant. I think that we have to be open-minded and not impose our own values and our own perspective on how other people think. I think we have to really believe that just because it's not tenable for us to think that way, that it's not tenable for other people to think how they're thinking. It seems very remote and very impossible. How could they do that? How could they not believe in what we believe? How could they put the democracy at risk? And I say to you easily that those people, how does the book say, Dr. Wolf, that the rich are just different. They're not like us. They don't think like us. It's a different perspective. It's the gas we opened up by saying that, I think, is they just think differently. And we've never had power like that before. So we don't understand the intoxication. Mm-hmm. As I said the other day, for a guy like Trump, is that if you are a pure narcissist and you taste real power the first time, if you become like a crack addict, you become addicted to that, and he will not be able to let it go.
Robert, you still there?
I am here, and just to kind of piggyback off what Dwight said, I want the listeners to get out of their comfort zone. I want them to go listen to some right-wing media, go listen to some right-wing podcasts.
Yes.
Watch the right-wing news stations. Listen to the way that these people talk. Understand what they are thinking and what they have planned. Get out of your silo and understand what the other side is going after, because they're on a completely different wavelength. We're trying to get voting rights, better education, health care, and a clean environment. They're trying to stop a socialist takeover from the deep state that's going to destroy Western civilization so that they can bring back Charlemagne. We're not talking about the same stuff. And that's a very difficult and scary situation where your political discourse are not based in the same objective reality. We need to understand that and better know how to counter it.
And for them, when you're right. The stakes are higher. It's about the civilization.
The stakes are different, right? The lens is different. So
The lens is different, but no. But before you begin, Doctor, the reason I said that, Dr. Wolf, is many of us are trying to go from my friend Lynn Richardson, brilliant financial planner. She said we live from payday to Monday. I mean, a lot of us are really looking at things through a very narrow lens. But when you listen to the right wing and their mouthpieces, if you will, I mean, and the people who opine on their behalf, number one, they have a meeting every Tuesday where they come up with their talking points for the week for all the major hosts on TV and radio. They've been doing it for decades. I mean, they are a very organized group of people. And so I guess that's my point. I'm like, no. For them, this is about saving, not my paycheck or my house. This is about saving the civilization. I didn't say I agreed with it, but that's where they are. Dr. Wolf.
Or saving their place in a pecking order. So if you believe in a brutal hierarchy, then you're very aggressive about not falling in that hierarchy, right? So I mean, I do understand that part. I don't disagree with that point. I do think human progress requires rejecting the hierarchy, not swapping who's in what slot. So I think it's important to remember that whenever we can. But on the other hand, I wouldn't take this lightly, so I do agree with that too. But I mean, I think the other piece here, though, is how do you sustain a tiny number of people with all the resources? Right now, you can sustain them with some sort of some amount of meritocracy and participation and diversity. That's one model. Or you can terrorize them down, and you can tell the majority of white working class men that, hey, you're not going to be rich, you're not even going to be middle class, but you can rape women and abuse minorities and be better than them, and that's what you get. And that's another model of controlling a large group of people. And that is a very sadistic, sick model and a very violent model, right? And ultimately, I'm sure this isn't a great use, and I don't mean any offense, that is what some people, I think, call rape culture. Inserting yourself where you're unwanted by force is rape. This is a rape of the body democratic. Right? And so you have to stand up against it, and you have to see it as what it is. And we have a long history of raping people we look down on in this country, metaphorically and unfortunately sometimes literally.
Well, not
so
just
I do think it's a survival thing.
Yes.
Okay, well, I mean, you can't.
No, my ancestors would say routinely. That's why you have black folks looking like everything in the United States, because it was routine.
Well, you have every folks looking like everything, right?
Yeah, but this
folks
was
who are busy with the moral purity. They couldn't keep themselves away from the pumpkins or the cadavers either.
No, but I'm just saying it was routine for black people, and and I think it's important for us to state that because we're so unwilling. We're so unwilling to deal with the abuse of black people in the United States of America. We will deal with every sin committed, grievous sin committed around the world, but we don't want to deal with indigenous people and what happened to black people in the United States. And until we deal with those sins, we're not going anywhere.
I'm probably out of place to say this, but I don't think it's a historical. So I think that we have an out of control problem of sexual assault now.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't think it was.
No, but what?
I mean, I'd love to think it's relegated to the past, but I don't.
Oh, no. I didn't say it was the past. I was just saying that there was a particular culture, and we can talk about that another day, on the plantations, and not just on the plantations that were the towns and the cities, Rosa Parks was known throughout the state of Alabama as an investigator for the NAACP when it was illegal to be a member of the NAACP. She was their state secretary, but before she became that, she would investigate the rapes of black women, the sexual assaults of black women that were never, ever, ever prosecuted. Ever, ever, ever. And she did it because she said, when I look at myself in the mirror, I see all of that. Because she was a very, very light-skinned woman, straight hair, and she knew where it came from. My grandmother, my father's mother, same thing. She wouldn't look at roots. She said, do you know why we look as we do? I don't want to talk about it. So that's why I bring that up. It's just, it's just a thing with me. And it's going to be. And I hope I make it a thing with my nieces and nephews and godchildren, including your daughter. How about that? My baby. That's right. Because I think we need to know what people have done to other people, what people have done to people, what we're capable of doing so we don't do it again. Gotta do that.
You owe at least to learn of the suffering, right? I mean,
Yes.
the bare minimum that you owe people to hear them out and hear what they've endured. It's the least you owe them, and it's also your own intellectual growth. Even if it's not always the most pleasant use of time, it's the most productive often.
But your closing thoughts. I want you to wrap this up for us today, and I promise you, we're going to come back and talk about the hits that people have taken during COVID economically and just all around, because I think that's so important. We're hearing it, and no one is talking
I
about
don't
it,
think
Dr.
it's
Wolf.
different, though. I think it's the same story. Look, so the fault lines, usually things crack along those fault lines. So my concern was just to make sure that we spend some time whenever it's best, and there's a lot of vital things equally or more important in a moment. But we had a chance to do a bunch of things to make this society a little more collective and equal because of a pandemic, right? And we didn't. And so now we're starting to see that the very successful things we did do, so start with the good news, is there were a lot of emergency economic interventions that really helped people because we started plunging into an awful poverty circumstance early in the pandemic. And now those remediations are gone, but the damage is still hitting and uncompensated. And we're starting to go back to a situation where particularly women, there's a lot of gendering here, and particularly people with young kids have done incredibly badly in the pandemic. Loss of income, loss of job, loss of stability, loss of benefits, loss of health care, and also a disproportional amount of the illness, particularly the serious illness. And so we have a situation here where we cut the benefits long before we cut the pain. And so we're starting to see this pandemic redistribute wealth upward again and away from women and away from immigrants and away from people with young kids. And women, immigrants, and people with young kids, you might also know them by their other name, the future.
You say they're the
So you
future.
got to be a little bit careful. I mean, look at the statistics. It's not much for mystery. If you can't read that out of the statistics, you shouldn't have gotten out of high school.
Dwight, you have a response to that?
No, I want to give my time to Robert. Robert has been really on point today.
Robert, you still there? He might have gone on already. Well, you know what? I can't say that I absolutely agree with you. And we're not looking at it because you know what? There's too many people who are still, as I come across this story that I'm going to put in this basket with the stories that you've given me. What is it? Rents are up 40% in some cities, forcing millions to find another place to live. And the face on that particular story that comes from, I think it's from the New York Times, no, Washington Post, excuse me, was a young black woman with her children. I mean, people are not doing well. I don't care what these news readers tell you, they're not. And we deserve to do well. I mean, my goodness. I mean, this redistribution of wealth, Dr. Wolf, is unbelievable. Max, it's unreal.
Yeah, I guess I just do want to say
equal before, too.
I want to say one quick thing, is that I always say that Jesus said, know the truth, only the truth can set you free, is that I've been to the concentration camps in Germany, and so and saw what they did to our Jewish brothers and sisters. And so I understand why people reacted to what Goofy said. whether I agree or not, I at least understand why they reacted to what they did. It's very important for us to understand not just each other's pain, but the factors that created the pain across the board. And you can only do that by being honest and true and understanding what really happened. And as long as we try to create this culture of this self-deception to make ourselves look better or feel better about ourselves, then we'll never even stumble upon the truth, and we never can get free or set others free.
Well, I agree to that. Walk a mile in my shoes. That's a real thing, everybody. We have got to start to do that. And that, oof, boy. Dr. Wolf, I'm going to give the closing thoughts to you.
There's not much I can improve on from the other comments. I think I would just say that everybody who wants to stand against this trend of really moving toward an overtly undemocratic, repressive regime in an effort to rekindle a past that wasn't, has to see above their differences to work together. Because there are enough of them that if we are disunited among our cracks, fissures, and differences, we'll fail together. And it'd be nice to do something other than fail together. This will probably be the sort of call of a lifetime.
This is where we are, which is why we brought this up today. And I want to thank you, Dr. Wolf, for just always being so generous with your time. I know there's so many other places where you are needed and where you can be. But I want to thank you for your willingness to share. No, you've always carved out time for me and my little shows. And I want to thank you for that. But people really appreciate you and just all the brilliance that you bring. Dwight, we feel the same way about you, all of the brilliance and the generosity of spirit that allows you, that compels you to do a carve out on your time and share with us and help us to grow and help us to get better. And so I want to thank you with all of my heart.
I learned a lot from you, Dwight, and also from the show and from Santita. So it's a pleasure to be here. And I mean, I always know something when the show is over that I didn't know when it began.
Well, and you are so generous. That's why I love Dr. Wolf, because he really is very, very kind to me. But that's what we do try to bring to people. We try to bring something to you that you didn't have when you got up this morning. And I hope that Paula, how you doing, sweetie? Dave Dowling and Lorraine and Nicole and Jewel and Alina. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. If not, please correct me. And Abraham, my sweetie down in Venezuela. Thank you. Flora, Lorraine, everybody. I'm sending you much love today. Thank you so much, Jewel, up in New York, for being with us. It means so much to have you here. Please like and share this show wherever you are. If you're on Facebook, like and share. If you're on YouTube, you can also share from that platform. And God bless you. I'll be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show, Lord willing. So there we go, everybody. I love you. God bless you, Dr. Wolf. I'll say this before he make his glasses fog up. I love you, Dr. Wolf. You don't have to say anything, but I do.
It is mutual.
Thank you.
I love you too. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I drag down your earnings through your ratings here.
Wow. What? But I do mean that with all of my heart. I do. And I thank you. And my old producer was asking about you. Lorna, who used to call you all the time.
Oh, sure.
Yes. And she said, "Oh, we just always loved
her family too."
Oh yes. Everybody's just trying to make it in this moment.
Some of your audience probably know this, but I think I did your Sunday morning show with Reverend for, I guess, every Sunday almost for 4 or 5 years at one point.
Absolutely.
Until you guys got famous enough to get the good guests.
No, you got married and had a baby. So we were not going to wake up the baby.
So they tell me.
So
I'm not sure about it, but yeah.
So what we want you, well, you're more than welcome back. That would make it, when you can, let me know when you can come on, because that would really do Reverend's heart much, much, much good to hear your voice.
I would love to.
So let me know. I mean,
he knows I'll talk as much as possible, so he can take a little break, and it won't matter.
No, he'll love that. He said,
He's usually got a lot to say, too. I'm just kidding.
Well, as he says, he's just brilliant. That boy's brilliant. That boy's brilliant. Of course, because you're young enough to be his son. How about that? So
He is about the same age as my father.
yeah,
So
he is. He's a little older, but they're in the same group. And how's your father doing?
All right.
Please give him my
I
love.
don't think he listens to any of the medical advice from anyone, which is probably unfortunate when he's a little older, but I guess that's kind of consistent with who he is.
Well, these men are they're old lions and they are stubborn. So what are you going to do? I mean, just trust me.
Yeah, it's hard to get an old lion to live on kale, I guess.
Oh, they're not going to do that. Let that go, honey. No, that ain't happening. Trust me. I know.
Well, we'd settle for just less bacon. I think we're not just.
Like I said, God bless you. Don't just do the best that you can and just keep it going because they are going to do what they want to do until they get out of here. I am convinced of that. Someone just said to me, look, what can you do? Because they're dealing with the same thing with their dad. He's got Parkinson's, and I said, well, she said, and this guy was, in his day, a real hard charging, very very high achieving guy, type A plus to the nth degree, shall I say? And they can't do anything with him. And there you go. So there you have it. But at least she still has him, and that's how I feel about my dad.
New tricks. Yeah, my line is it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks who doesn't want to learn new tricks and who bites.
There you go. That's what I'm dealing with. That's what I'm dealing with. My father he just smolders. He just looks at you like his mother used to do. His eyes narrow, his lips get even thinner. He just
snarl almost. Yeah.
He's not going to do anything because as my mother says, my father doesn't have a mean bone in his body. He's not going to do anything. Trust me. He ain't going to do nothing.
He's just going to show you how unhappy he is, make you feel bad.
There you go. There you go. That's what he does. That's all he does. He's not going to do anything else because he doesn't have it in him. He just doesn't.
Yeah, that can cut too, though. Different cut, but it can cut too.
And you're right, it does. But I guess I'd rather have someone who's not mean. That's what I'm cut out for. That's what I'm cut out for. But whatever. You take your relatives any way you can get them because you're just grateful to have them. So.
Or ungrateful, but can't change them anyway. Can't swap them out.
So there you go. Oh, bless your heart.
If there was a trade-in program, you'd see me on that line. I'd sleep out.
But you can't do that.
Better than concert tickets.
You can't do that. These are your people. These are your people. You can't do that.
Yes.
You can't do that.
I guess.
They had specific things that they had to teach you. Specific things you have to learn from them.
The what not to do list?
Yep. Sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's that. So I'm going to let you all go. Max, I'm going to call you a little bit later today. If you call me when you have a little time. I'm going to run over and see my mom now and see what she's up to and what piece of furniture she wants me to move. How about that? So let me go put on some flat shoes so I can move something in the house. But sending you much love today. And Matt, I want to thank you for a great show, as always. And God bless you, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Love y'all. Bye-bye.